I've been putting this off for quite a while now, mainly because this is the comic book equivalent of a war crime.
You maniacs!
But it's time. Let's do this.
Oh, damn you! God damn you all to hell!
Without further ado, this is DC's I Am Not Starfire. Right off the bat, we're shown Starfire on the cover of Vogue. A little background on her: she's existed in the comics since the 1980s and is a member of the Teen Titans. But as I'm sure you've guessed from the title, this book isn't about her. It's about her daughter, Mandy. And right off the bat, the book shows the reader that Mandy is nothing like her mom. Starfire is tall, fit, beautiful, and has superpowers. And her daughter is the exact opposite. And there's no subtlety in this. It's a direct head-to-head comparison. Whoa there, hold it. You're trying to tell me that out of Starfire's powers, which include superhuman durability, speed, reflexes, agility, endurance, and stamina, semi-invulnerability, an accelerated healing factor, flight, energy projection, starbolts, she also has the ability to learn a language by kissing someone, she has immunity to intense cold and heat, energy absorption, and self-sustenance? You're trying to tell me that her daughter inherited none of them.
Get out!
Right. But I digress. Back to the book. We get a very accurate description of these two characters and the dynamic they share. Starfire is cheerful and happy, and she seems to be looking after her daughter, and Mandy is in a foul mood and has an expression that can only be described as resting bitch face. Get used to it, you're gonna be seeing it a lot. They're having dinner, and Mandy's doing her best to ignore her mom. I'm having a really hard time believing that this is actually Starfire's daughter and not the love child of the Penguin and the author. Speaking of the author, now would be a good time to introduce her to you, and after I do, a lot of things about this book are going to start making sense. Enter Mariko Tamaki. You know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words? Yeah. Let's not beat around the bush and get straight to the point. She's a feminist, an LGBTQ activist, a vocal critic of fat shaming, and she works to promote diversity and inclusion. Personal pronouns in her Twitter bio? You know it. Now, you might be thinking that this doesn't mean that she's a bad writer. However, it's been proven time and again that social justice activists insert their personal politics and agendas in everything they write at the expense of the characters and the story. So before we get back to I Am Self-Insert, let's have a quick look at one of her most famous books, This One Summer. So this is a book about two teenage girls discovering themselves and their sexuality while battling family dynamics and mental disabilities. Here's some art from the book. Do these look like teenagers to you? Now, surprise, surprise, some people thought this book is inappropriate considering that it's apparently sexually explicit, contains profanity and drug use, and they had it removed from a few places. And what was Mariko Tamaki's response? That it's erasing queer lives. So essentially, she called her critics homophobic. Anyway, let's get back to the book. Mandy is having an appointment with the guidance counselor who's talking to her about college, and she says that she's not going. The guidance counselor tells Mandy that college is the next step too, and Mandy interrupts her saying, "towards being in depth for the rest of my life." Hold it right there. The book literally began with Starfire on the cover of Vogue. She's a superhero and a member of the Teen Titans, who are most probably subsidized by the Justice League. Long story short, one called to Batman and they can build a college for Mandy. But never mind, she walks out of the room and we're introduced to her friend Lincoln. We see some of the other kids in the school who are actually friendly towards Mandy and are asking about her mom because they appear to be her fans. We get a one-page flashback of Mandy's school years, which are apparently justification for her to hate everybody in her school with the exception of Lincoln. They're hanging out in class, and her daydreaming session is interrupted by her diverse teacher, who's pairing them up for assignments. And she gets paired up with Claire. Enter the crush. We get a glimpse of something that could have been vastly more interesting, the Teen Titans fighting giant beetles in space. But we're pretty much instantly yanked back to the school, where Mandy manages to blow herself up. Then literally on the next page, Mandy is at Claire's house. Seriously, this is how this book is. The lab explosion, Literally the next page is her going to her crush's house. Anyway, they hang around and Mandy's in her typical foul mood. Then all of a sudden we get a flashback of a test that Mandy did 2 days ago. She's chewing her pencil, tapping her fingers, tapping her feet, and she just runs away. Her crush informs her that some other people will be coming, and Mandy just packs up and leaves. She gets home and her mother is having a guest. Doug the date. By the way, take note of what Starfire is doing here. She's coming out of what's probably the kitchen with something fresh out of the oven, and the first thing she does is ask Mandy if she's had dinner. She tells Doug that Mandy is an astounding student and she's beaming from joy. And Mandy? Well, she continues being in a foul mood and she runs off to her room. Starfire goes to check up on her and Mandy's acting dismissive. Here's a reminder that this is the book's protagonist that you're supposed to be rooting for. Mandy checks out her social media, because that's what the kids do, and the next day she's in the girls' locker room getting ready for a game. Of course, Mandy's not paying attention, and she doesn't even bother to lift a finger to try to catch the ball that's passing within an arm's length of her. One of the girls tells her that she sucks, and I have to agree. Mandy sucks. Again, I would like to point out the pacing of this book. This is page 53, and this is page 54. The flow of this book is horrendous. There's no pacing to speak of, and reading it is actually a chore. As she's getting out of the locker room, one of the kids outside has a remark for her saying, "Look, it's Miss Apathetic 2000. To which Mandy replies, "Whoa, bullying outside the changing room. So old school." Two things. First, that kid's right. She did just ruin their game by being apathetic. And second, that's not bullying. But what I find baffling is that for some reason, Mandy's crush appears to like her, when Mandy is just not likable. From the beginning of this book, Mandy has been in a mood, dismissive, rude, and gross. What's not to like? They hang around the playground for some reason. Mandy makes one of the girls uncomfortable, and she changes her resting bitch face for a smug, arrogant one. She gets home, and her mom is waiting for her with some Chinese food and a bunch of college applications. And you guessed it, our lovable protagonist is in a foul mood again. She confronts her mother and asks her why she's digging into her life, to which Starfire responds, "Because this is what the responsible parents do," and Mandy says, "No, it's not." Starfire points out that something's wrong, Mandy says that nothing's wrong, and she goes to her room. So yeah, Mandy hissy fit number who even cares anymore. Now look at this page. I'm assuming this is where the reader is supposed to have sympathy towards Mandy, but I'm looking at Starfire and I'm seeing a woman who's being a supportive good mother, and her daughter is acting like an absolute brat for no apparent good reason. This could have been an interesting story about what it's like growing up in the shadow of a superhero parent, but it's not. We get a flashback of Mandy's birthdays, and oh, look, it's Starfire being a good mom. You do realize that Starfire probably has to save the world every few days or so, but somehow she managed to be at every single one of her daughter's birthdays. And oh look, even the Teen Titans come to celebrate Mandy's 16th birthday. We get more glimpses of this book's lovely dialogue, and we see Starfire watching over her daughter yet again. Back we go to the school, and if it wasn't for this book's horrible pacing, you'd be excused if you thought that Mandy actually did have a superpower of teleporting around. So anyway, she's hanging out with her crush, and why is this girl attracted to Mandy when she has shown zero likable qualities for the entire duration of the book? Mandy gets home, she has a hissy fit because she told her mother she needed the house, but her mother's friends are in her mother's house. And she grabs the bowl of snacks from Nightwing, saying that they're for her guest. What is this? This is art in a DC book nowadays. Now, you might say that this book is for children or that the art style is different, but you know what? No, this is a book coming under the DC label with a DC logo on it, and there's certain expectations. If this was some kind of crowd-funded project, fine, do whatever. But you're using DC as a brand, DC characters, and this is the quality you expect people to pay for. It's ridiculous. Mandy's crush comes and they spend some time together. And we get another flashback. This time it was when Mandy was at camp and she didn't tell anybody that her mom was a superhero, and oh look, she kissed the girl for the first time. Then her mom shows up, the girl finds out and calls her out for lying, and of course, it's everybody else's fault. Back to reality, they hug and Mandy seems happy for a moment. She wakes up the next morning and Claire has posted a selfie with the Teen Titans. Because apparently a teenager meeting superheroes and taking a selfie with them is some kind of great betrayal. And of course Mandy proceeds to act like an absolute douchebag about it. And what does she do? She's rude and she runs away. You know, it's a good thing I didn't tell you to take a shot every time Mandy has a temper tantrum, a hissy fit, or just acts like a brat or goes in the corner to sulk, because you'd be dead by now. Mandy gets home, and she's greeted by a visibly mad Starfire who confronts her about running away from the test. She was supposed to be out somewhere in space, presumably doing superhero stuff, but she's at home to deal with her daughter, because apparently she cares about her daughter. And of course, Mandy throws a hissy fit, and then decides to run away to the nearest coffee shop.
You serious?
I can't, seriously. Oh. And of course her crush is trying to reach out to her while her mom is standing outside the window. So naturally, she's mad and she's just about to throw a temper tantrum when, after over 90 pages of book, something finally happens.
Oh, beautiful!
Darkfire shows up. Long story short, Darkfire is Starfire's sister, she's very powerful, and she's a bad guy. Starfire immediately pleads for her daughter, saying she's not a warrior. You don't say. What could have possibly given you the idea that Mandy isn't a warrior? Is it the attitude, the lack of discipline, or maybe because she's so out of shape that if she tries to run half a block, she's probably going to collapse from exhaustion? So they get kidnapped, thrown in a small box, and finally they have a chance to talk. Partially because Mandy doesn't have the luxury of throwing her hissy fits and she has nowhere to run to. Starfire tells Mandy that her grandfather was the king of the planet Tamaran and her older sister Blackfire was supposed to be next in line for the throne. However, Starfire's powers manifested first, and her father decided that she should be the next ruler. Blackfire was enraged, she left, and when she returned, she was a warrior with an army and she conquered the entire planet. I'd like to draw your attention to this quote from the book. She was a warrior as powerful as me, if not more. Remember that, it's gonna be relevant really soon. Starfire continues by explaining that she was enslaved, she ran away, and she promises Mandy that she will not let Darkfire hurt her. They get interrupted by some guards who tell them it's time, and Mandy is given some armor. And we're taken to the school stadium. Sure, why not? So the battle for the throne of Tamaran is not going to be held in front of the world nations or some sacred arena atop a mountain or, on Tamaran itself. No, it's going to take place on Mandy's school stadium. Yep, that's it. Where's the pillow? So yeah, forget the fact that she's already conquered the planet. She has to have the fight because reasons. Mandy steps off and her friends are shocked. And just as Blackfire is about to blow Mandy's face off, Starfire intervenes and tells her to run. So the two sisters start to fight, and we get a surprise guest appearance from Humpty Dumpty. No wait, never mind. That's just Mandy. And hey, would you look at that? Mandy's hyperventilating trying to run half a block. In the meantime, Blackfire overwhelms Starfire and she comes crashing down to the ground. Mandy's crying, and despite Starfire just getting her ass whooped and falling from the sky, she's still being a good mom by consoling her daughter. Blackfire walks up to them, and for all of you saying, this is a book aimed for kids, here's a sampling of the wonderful child-friendly dialogue. And I quote, "Why don't you just fuck off and die?" So Blackfire decides to give Mandy a close shave. Not close enough, considering her head is still attached to her body. But Mandy's crush yells for her to get up, and in a surprise to no one, Mandy's powers manifest.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.
So Mandy just got her powers. Do you think she's gonna have a little trouble using them, considering she just got them and she has no idea how they work? Of course not. Oh, by the way, do you remember that quote about Blackfire from a few pages ago? As powerful as me, if not even more? Yeah, that's going to come into play right now, because surely her aunt, who is a trained, seasoned warrior that conquered an entire planet and is by this book's own writing more powerful than Starfire, is going to be at least a challenge for Mandy. You'd think that would be an interesting moment, wouldn't it? But no, Mandy is the author's self-insert after all, so of course she's going to kick her ass with practically zero effort. So just before she lands the finishing blow, her mother stops her, they hug it out. The Teen Titans show up, they take Blackfire away, and someone comes in and asks for Mandy's autograph. So Mandy gets instant celebrity status, she gets moved to the Teen Titans headquarters, where she of course continues to slack off. She has a moment with her friend, and then of course, her and her crush get together. Mandy has another makeover and what is this? This is pathetic. You know that, right? Anyway, they celebrate her birthday. She has a little monologue and she flies off. The end. Yeah, that's right. You heard me. This is it. Over 160 pages, and this is it. This is hands down one of the worst graphic novels I have ever seen. The art is subpar for a DC book. The protagonist is repulsive. And in the end, who was this for? It's not for young adult novel fans, it's not for comic book fans. The only person who this was made for is Mariko Tamaki, so she can projectile vomit herself over the pages of this book through her blatantly obvious self-insert. And the real victims of this book are Starfire, because Mariko Tamaki kind of forced herself on her, and the readers. And of course, if you have any sort of criticism towards this pile of garbage, you guessed it, you're a fat-shaming homophobe. So, to sum it all up, this book is poorly written, with questionable art for a title coming from DC, with a repulsive protagonist that has absolutely no redeeming qualities but is rewarded with pretty much everything in the end. It's bloated and incoherent, and its 160-page content could easily be squished down to around 30 or 40. And the only actual reason for this book's existence appears to be for Mariko Tamaki to place her repulsive self-insert in it. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say I suffered brain damage while going through this mess. Now, if you'll excuse me, I just took a bullet for you guys. So I'm gonna have myself a well-deserved rest. Have a good one. I am out.
Don't mind me, I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.